Hello there, and welcome again to Equip for Ministry and Service. When you talk about ministry, it's more than serving in the church, in the family, in the marketplace. I think we are in error when we think ministry is only what we do in the church. We're supposed to be serving wherever you are. When you are serving in your family, in the business, wherever you are, in that organization, in that institution, you're actually doing ministry, because ministry is about people, it's about changing lives, transforming lives. It's being concerned about the lives of people. And of course, ministry is about reaching out to the people, and people are everywhere. People are not necessarily in the church, they are everywhere. And we reach them out with the love of Christ, such that I want to challenge us, wherever we are, outside there, in the marketplace, at home, do people see Christ, being displayed through our lives? Well, I know we do that when we come for worship, maybe Sunday morning, and we are praising, and we are full of love and enjoying the fellowship of each other and company of each other. But how about when we are out there? Do we portray the picture of Christ? Do people look at us? Did you know, let me remind you, when they looked at the believers, when they first began, Jesus came and preached, and then the numbers were growing. And in Antioch, the first place, they were called Christians. Actually, they were not called Christians by believers or other Christians. They were called Christians by people who are not Christians. That was in the book of Acts in Antioch. Now, the reason they were called Christians, it is because they were Christ-like. Christian simply means Christ-like. Now, what am I saying? What I'm saying is that wherever we are, we should represent Christ in every way, in every manner. In your family, do you represent Christ? In your business, okay? In that organization where you work, in that company, do people see Christ through your life? Now, I want to continue with our message on transformational leadership. Transformational leadership. Leadership is key, because when God created man in the book of Genesis 1, he put leadership in man. Now, man was the last one to be created, because God wanted to first create everything, and the animals and the plants and the mountains and the water and everything, the sun and the moon. And then God created man in his image. Now, when God created everything else, he spoke it out, and it was there. But when he created man, he said, let us make man in our own image, meaning the image of God is that also of leadership. God is a leader of all. So in us also there is the element of leadership. And I want to repeat again, like I said last time, that you're not a leader because of the position that you hold. Because some people are so worried about their position. They're worried about titles. It's not even a title. I've seen people who are very good leaders, well, until they got a title. And then they were given a title that destroyed their leadership capabilities. So you can actually lead without a title. May I say, you don't even need a title to lead. Okay? May I even say, you don't even need a position to lead, because sometimes we are so much carried by positional leadership, where people have to always acknowledge you through your position, such that even if they don't mention your position, they don't mention your title, they don't mention your credentials, then you'll be so offended. If people refer to you just by your name, you'll be so offended. But that's not who we should be. We should not be thinking so much about our titles, our position, and all that. We should be thinking about the change, and that is the transformation we are talking about. And again, to remind you, transformational leadership, it is a style of leadership in which the leader identifies the needed change. In other words, this is the kind of leadership that brings change and transformation. And then the leader will create a vision to guide the change through inspiration. We'll come later sometime and talk about vision. But for now, we want to talk about transformational leadership. Now, I want us to move to looking at dimensions of transformational leadership. There are several dimensions of transformational leadership. One is that it creates future, and actually that is the main focus. Now, leadership is about creating future for the people. You help people to see there is a tomorrow, okay? There's a tomorrow. It's like vision. What is vision? It's a mental picture of your future. It's a mental picture of where you're going. It's like when you start a journey from here to Mombasa, from Nairobi to London, from Nairobi to Cape Town, Nairobi to Kampala, wherever you're going. Now, before you even leave your place, you begin to visualize, you begin to see, this is where I am going, okay? So that is vision. So you're not there yet, but you see it. So what we are saying is that transformational leadership creates the future. This is the main focus for this kind of leadership. It helps people to see where they are going. Those of you that have been in a plane when you're flying to maybe a local city in Kenya or in Africa or Europe or America, wherever you're going, before you actually take off, your trip may be a couple of hours, 5 hours, 10 hours on the flight. And then the pilot begins to say, talk about where you're going and gives you, information about where you're going, because they can see it through the satellite. They can see the weather. Maybe where you're coming from, it's very cold or very hot. Maybe it's raining, and then they're telling you where you're going is very hot. Maybe you're coming from a place you haven't seen rain for months, and then they're saying where you're going, by the time we land, it'll be raining. Okay? So they are not talking about where you are now. And that is how vision helps you to progress and move forward. Because if all we see is where we are, then we will never achieve much. If all we see is what we can do now, we will never accomplish much. Now, show me somebody who has a future. It is somebody, and I'll tell you, this is somebody with a vision. This is somebody who is creating the future. Now, when God called Abraham in Genesis 12, he said, if you read from verse 1, God called Abraham and said, go to the land I will show you. Now, the Bible says, if you read Genesis 12, Abraham begins to move. Abraham begins to move. Now, he did not see the whole picture, but God said, he created, when God spoke to him these words, he created in him some mental picture. He didn't have the physical appearance of where he was going, but in him, there was the mental picture. He began to see. And I want to encourage you to begin to imagine, to see where you're going. As the Bible says, our God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask or even imagine. So imagining is key. Okay? Get it right. Imagining is important. Where you begin to visualize, you begin to imagine. That's why when children are growing up and you ask a child, when you grow up, and we used to do that in lower primary. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher. When I grow up, I want to be an engineer. I want to be a pilot. And of course, all those good things children will say, I want to be, I want to be, I want to be. In other words, you're helping the child to begin to visualize 20 years from now, 25, 30 years from now, because that's the way life should be. You begin to focus on where you are going. It is dangerous to focus on just where you are, okay? It's dangerous to focus on only where you are coming from. Your destiny, your vision, where you're going is not where you're coming from. And this becomes a big obstacle for most of us because most of the time we are thinking or we are held back or held down by where we are coming from. Because our minds are full, and mind is very powerful. Because where your mind goes is where you go. If you are always focusing your mind on your past, and you can tell you're always talking about, I came from here, this was my background, oh, we have always been poor, we have never achieved, no one in my family has succeeded, this doesn't happen in our family. And then you begin just to focus on those things. My friend, you will never achieve anything. You will never go anywhere because you have the wrong focus. The best focus is to focus ahead and not just where you are, not just a few meters away, not just a week or a few months, where you begin to visualize yourself and your life 10 years from today, the future. Now, when God spoke to the children of Israel, and he said through the prophet Jeremiah 29:11, and he says, I know the plans I have for you. I know the plans I have for you. Now, plans are for the future. You can't plan for yesterday. It's too late. You can't plan for last month or last year. It is too late. We plan for the future. It is part of the journey. And in one of the programs, we will talk about planning because that is key in any vision. Now, God says to them, I know the plans I have for you. Okay? In other words, he's saying, I know the future I have for you. He's creating a future in their thinking. Don't just think about now. This, if I can help you to understand even better, this time they are in bondage. They're in captivity for 70 years. They're in Babylon. So they're not in a very good position, okay? But yes, God is saying, think outside where you are. Because many times we always think inside of where we are. Many times we think about, oh, this is my situation. I will never get out of this. This is where I am. This is where I will be forever, the rest of my life. And you think about where you are. But God is saying, I know you have been, all these years you have been thinking about Babylon. You're thinking about bondage. You're thinking about what is not working. You're thinking about problems and challenges. But now, I challenge you to think about where you are going. So he says, I know the plans I have for you, for good and not for evil, to give you, listen, to give you a future and a hope. To give you a future and a hope. Again, he's saying, the future you will have and the future you will see, there is hope in the future. Right now, when you look around you, you don't see any hope, you don't see anything working. All you see is problem, challenges, and all that. But the people who change things, the people who transform things, are people who refuse to be preconditioned by their circumstances. Okay? Because most of the time, we are conditioned by our circumstances, the homes we grow in, the schools we went to. Okay, the other day I was visiting the school I went to in primary, and a few changes have happened, a few paint work here and there, but not any significant change has actually taken place. But you see, I could have gone through that kind of a school, that kind of institution, maybe the family you are in or the family you grew up, and you can decide, I will not allow this school, this environment to precondition my way of thinking. I will think outside of my circumstances. My beginning may have not been good, my bringing up maybe was not the best. Maybe I lost this, I lost that, and all those problems that you went through, those who are listening to me right now. And you can be there And that can be holding you down and pushing you down all the time. Every time you want to rise up, there is always a voice that tells you, oh, you can never make it. There's a voice that tells you you're not the kind that succeed. You're not the kind that actually make a difference. So there's that voice always telling you. That's the voice of yesterday. It is the voice of today. But there's another voice of tomorrow, of the future, that says, I know the plans I have for you, to give you a future and a hope. So transformational leadership brings people to the place where they can see a bright future, where they can see where they are going, where they can see this is where God says to Abraham, like I said in Genesis 12, that leave your country, go to the land I will show you. Do not just be held here. Leave your people, leave the familiar. And most of the time, the people the people who succeeded, the people who did great work, are people who decided, I'm leaving my familiar grounds. Okay? Not just physically, but even mentally. Because again, they say you may take somebody from the bush, but it's hard to get the bush out of them. That's why, when the children of Israel were going to Egypt, they were going from Egypt to go to Israel, there's a time they got into a lot of problems and they began to remember where they came from. Meaning, and they began to complain to Moses, and they were saying, hey, why didn't you allow us to die there? Why is it that there were no graves there? And they were saying there were good onions, there were watermelons, there were good things that were happening there. These people are in oppression. But now because there is trouble, they even forget because their minds were not fully transformed. And actually God had said, if I allow them to go through this journey in a short journey or just a few days, because it would have been impossible for them to get to their land of promise in 2 weeks. But they had to be there for a long time because God said if they find enemies along the way, they will change their mind. So God says, no, I will let them go through this journey so that they don't turn back, so that they have their mind will be transformed, their mind will be changed, because transformational leadership also begins by transforming your mind. Where your mind is changed, where your mind is transformed. As the Bible says, be renewed, be transformed in your mind, in your thinking. Because again, as a man thinketh, so is he. And you can tell for sure they were not fully transformed, they were not fully changed, because they started thinking about where they came from. Oh, Moses. Actually, they wanted to stone Moses. They are complaining against God, and they're saying, oh, why did you bring us here to die in the wilderness? Now you can think what they are seeing death. God is saying, according to his promise to them, I'm taking you to a land flowing with the milk and honey. A good land where there are big houses, where the land is productive, where I'm giving you the best land flowing with the milk and honey. That's the best it can get. But here, they begin to say, we are dying. So what is happening here? They have lost their focus, because leadership is supposed to allow us to remain focused. But for them, they have lost their focus. All they are seeing is, now we are dying. We are dying. We're going to be finished. We have enemies that are coming against us. We are dying. Now, are you in that kind of a space? Are you in that kind of a place where all you see is death, and your mind is full of negativity? Your life is full of negativity, and all you see is problems. And there are people who go through this life, and they live for 50 years, 70, 80, even 100 years, and they are negative. And all they see is problems, and all they see is challenge, and all they see is nothing is working, nothing is good. It depends on what you're wearing. In other words, what glasses are you wearing. When you wear some glasses like the sunglasses, sometimes you can see different depending on the color, depending on, how the glasses look like. You can be looking, it looks dark, looks like it's gonna rain, but when you remove the glasses, it's all sunny because of the glasses you're wearing. I think some of you need to change the glasses you're wearing. Okay, a story is told there was a time there was a big drought, and the cows were refusing to eat the grass because it looked dry. And then somebody decided, I'll put on some glasses, some sunglasses on these cows, and the sunglasses were green. So when they went out, they saw all the grass was green and the cows were eating all the grass and sweeping it, clean. Why? Because of what they were seeing. Well, I want to ask you before I close, what are you seeing? Are you seeing a bright future? Are you seeing dryness, wilderness, death, hopelessness? Okay? And of course, it doesn't matter where you live. And I know, like we are here in Kenya. I don't know where you're watching from, but there are times we look at our city, we look at our country, we look at our village, we look at our school, we look at our families, and all we see is gloom. And you start wishing, I wish I could go to another country. I wish I was born in America. I wish I was born in Europe. I wish I was born in Japan or some place, in this world. I wish I can get the visa and leave tomorrow. Now, I know everywhere you go, and I have been to a few places, there are problems. You go to any country, any part of this world, there's nowhere you can go and people do not have their own challenges. And they are unique. Everywhere you go, there are unique challenges to the people that live there. So you can choose, because it's not about your environment. You're not going to enjoy a good life because of the environment. Transformational leadership says, I'm here to change even the environment I do not like. Okay? So you could be in an environment that is not good, that is ugly, that is discouraging, and all that. But you see, you can change also your way of seeing things. You can remove what I call the grasshopper mentality. Because again, when Joshua, when Moses sent the 12 spies, 10 of them came and said, in our eyes, we looked like grasshoppers. These are giants, the people we are going to, who are sitting on the land, the people who are occupying the land. When we in our eyes, they did not even say in their eyes. Listen, they did not even say in their eyes. They said in our eyes, we look like grasshoppers. Can you imagine a whole grown-up man saying, I feel like a grasshopper? So I want to ask you as I close, do you feel like a giant? Do you feel strong? Like when David went to kill Goliath, he felt like a giant. He felt like, I am strong. I'm not looking at a giant. I'm the one who is a giant. You can look at your life because you are a leader and don't see problems of this life as giants. You can look at life and decide, I am the giant. I am able. I am strong. So these guys, they came back to Moses and they said, you know what? We looked at ourselves and we looked like grasshoppers. And for them, they looked like giants. But you see, that was not true. Sometimes when people are afraid and fearful, it will exaggerate the problem. Because when I read the scriptures later on, they found a woman, a Canaanite woman, and this woman was, talking to them, and she said to them, we have been afraid of you, because this woman asked them, where are you coming from? This was Joshua and Caleb. Where are you from? Actually, Joshua had sent 2 spies, and they were asking, where are you from? They said, from Israel. They said, oh my goodness, we are done. For the last 40 years, from when we heard about Israel, we started shaking and melting. And we built all these walls to protect ourselves against the Israelites, because we knew they have a great God. We have heard stories of how they have conquered and how strong they are. But you see, now the same people, these are the same people, they were afraid and they were saying they are giants. And they are the people who are afraid of them. Sometimes What you are afraid of, they are actually afraid of you. What you are running away from, they are probably running away from you. Let me close with a story. I remember one time I was coming from Githurai Church. I was ministering there in the late 90s, and I was living in Kikuyu. So I was going home, and I was not driving. I was using a bus, and got home in Kikuyu around 10:30 in the night, the last bus that used to go all the way through Kawangware and back to Kikuyu. And so when I arrived, the place I used to walk to go home from where I was dropped by the bus was a very dark place. And then, sometimes I would be feeling like, oh my, this is a very dark, risky, could be attacked and all that. And one day it happened, I banged on somebody because it's so dark you could not even see. So we banged on each other. And then for me, what came to mind is that I have been attacked. This is a dark. And then I started running backwards, not realizing the same person also thought he was being attacked, and he ran the opposite direction. So because it was tarmacked, we could hear the steps. I heard the steps. He's hearing this. He's running faster, going opposite. Both of us were going opposite direction. That's what I came to realize later on, because both of us were running away. Are you running away from the same problem that actually is supposed to be conquering and overcoming? When you're a leader, you don't run away from problems. You face them, you conquer them, and you move on to other areas. You don't look for appropriate territories. You actually change your territory to be appropriate. Well, we'll continue from there. We look at more dimensions of transformational leadership. Today I just talked about one, that this kind of leadership creates the future. We'll look at 4 others next time. Thank you. Become a leader, grow up to be a leader, and see you